When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to the All Things Nintendo podcast. I'm Brian Shea, and this is a weekly podcast to discuss all the biggest news and games from the world of Nintendo. If you're watching the video, don't worry, it's not going to be another episode with just me talking to you. I've been saying it from the beginning of probably October, that the early part of December is shaping up to be a wild week for people who play on Nintendo consoles, and turns out that came true because we have got a review marathon episode for you here on All Things Nintendo this week. First up, obviously, we're going to start with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I'll be joined by Game Informer's Kyle Hilliard for that one. Then we're going to leap over to Marvel Cosmic Invasion, where I'll be joined by Game Informer's Marcus Stewart. And then to wrap everything up, Game Informer's Eric Van Allen will be joining me to share his thoughts on Octopath Traveler 0 and Demonschool. So it's going to be a jam-packed review marathon. And I said last week when I gave the pre-recorded episode over Thanksgiving that I would hit any news ahead of time, or this week, I'm sorry, if anything happened. And, you know, not a lot happened. So I was planning on saving this segment for if news hit, but not a whole lot has happened as of this recording. There's a few things I wanted to mention, but, we're not going to dwell too much here. First of all, if you are still playing Pokemon Legends ZA, it seems like they have updated their mystery gift to be a pretty good one. So if you connect to the internet and you do the mystery gift, it looks like they're handing out free Mewtwo's. So that is ahead of the Mega Dimension DLC that is hitting next week. And it doesn't seem like there's any kind of end date on it. So all you have to do is connect to the internet through the menu, select mystery gift, and it should deposit a Mewtwo into your box. So that's pretty cool stuff. Also, we have the next Sonic the Hedgehog movie, Sonic the Hedgehog 4, coming in 2027, but we also have an announcement that in December 2028, we're getting another Sonic the Hedgehog movie within this universe, and it's kind of positioned as though it is a culmination. It's looking like a spin-off, but it's also being referred to as a Sonic Universe event film. So I don't know if that is going to be some sort of crossover, if that is going to be some kind of character-specific situation, like maybe it's like a shadow-focused movie, but being referred to as an event film kind of indicates that it might be something more than that. Maybe they're going to go the movie route with Shadow instead of the TV show route with like they did with Knuckles, because I know for a lot of people, including myself, that Knuckles show just felt like a lot of filler. And if they cut it down to probably the length of a movie, it probably would have been a much better thing. Though sadly, even though Idris Elba is incredible and Adam Pally is great in the role of Wade Whipple, I don't know how many people would have gone to the theaters to see a Knuckles show, but maybe they would have streamed it on Paramount Plus, and maybe they could have done that. But Shadow, I think that's a different story. I think enough people are big enough fans of Shadow, especially after Sonic 3, that they could get, some box office returns on that, but we'll have to wait and see. The first thing that we're going to get in the Sonic universe is going to be March 2027 when we get the next mainline Sonic movie. And then a year and a half later in December 2028, we will get whatever this preliminary announcement ends up being. And then really the only other thing I wanted to touch on before we throw to these reviews, of which we have 4 to talk about, is that, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we got the announcement of some new games joining the NES and Game Boy libraries. So on the NES side, we have Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos, and Battletoads. And then the Game Boy side gives us Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters and Bionic Commando, which, some big names in there. I'm particularly excited about Battletoads. I have a lot of fond memories, even though that game is designed to be infuriatingly tough. It's, a great game overall. It's very, very impactful for a lot of people my age in particular. I still remember going to my next door neighbor's house and, playing Battletoads with him back in second grade, I guess that was. And then Ninja Gaiden 2, that's fun. That's cool. I like the old Ninja Gaiden games before they went 3D, and they're very tough as well. But that's a lot of action games in the NES era. I don't have any experience with the Game Boy version of Bionic Commando, and I've never really been a big Kid Icarus fan. But let me know if you're excited for those, because I don't really have much to say about the Game Boy games. And also, while you're at it, let me know what your thoughts are on what that Sonic movie could be, the spin-off that's happening in December 2028, because that's a really fascinating thing to speculate on, because there's just so many directions they could go. It could just be a character that they introduce in Sonic 4, which, we already know they're introducing. I won't spoil the end of Sonic 3, but they're introducing another mainline, like well-liked character in Sonic 4. So, there could really be anything in that movie. So lots to speculate on. But before we throw to the review conversations that we are going to have today, just a reminder that you are listening to the All Things Nintendo podcast. This show arrives in your podcast feeds completely free each and every Friday, brought to you by the fine folks who support me on Patreon, because without people like them, this show simply would not exist. You can help the show continue going on Patreon for as little as $3 a month. That gets you access to the community Discord, which lets you hang out with fellow listeners of the show. But there are also $5 and $10 tiers to get you things like early and ad-free episodes, plus shout-outs at the end of every show. Just go to patreon.com and search All Things Nintendo. It is only because of the wonderful folks who support this show that it is able to continue each and every week. And with that, not a whole lot of news to discuss this week. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope if you're in the north like I am, you're staying warm. It's been particularly frigid and getting a lot of snow. And I hope if you celebrate Christmas, I'm hoping that you're starting to get into the Christmas spirit. I always love this time of year. But for now, we're going to take our first break of this episode. And when we get back, I will be joined by Kyle Hilliard as we discuss our impressions and reviews of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. We will be right back.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. Enjoy comfortable rooms and friendly service when you stay with Hilton instead. Save up to 25% this season when you book with Hilton. Hilton for the stay. Terms apply.
We are back, and one of the biggest releases in Nintendo's 2025 hit this week. The long-awaited Metroid Prime 4 is out now as you are listening to this, and the man that is joining me now is the guy who wrote the review for GameInformer.com. It's Kyle Hilliard. Kyle, how are you?
Hit me. I did do those things. I'm doing good. I've played Metroid, so my life has improved.
I've made a stink about it, or at least made a point to bring up that Game Informer has not been on the pre-release distribution list for Nintendo, so we've always had to bring other guests on. But now we are. This is actually our first time back having a pre-release code. So I've also been playing Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I am approximately 7 hours into the experience. You have been playing a lot more. I think, have you wrapped up your second playthrough yet, or are you still working through that?
You hit a point of no return in that game, where it's like, hey, just heads up, this is if you keep playing, you're going to beat the game. I've hit that on my second playthrough on hard, to give you sort of a, it's probably like 20 hours total. It's not a very long game, which is why it wasn't too like, I was a little annoyed for reasons I'm sure that we'll get into here shortly, of like why I felt the need to start another game, like restart. I usually don't replay games, especially not back to back. It's pretty rare. But because it's like not a super long game in a complimentary way, I was like, yeah, you know what, I'll go through it again. It's fun.
All right. Well, before we jump into that, what is your history with the Metroid Prime subseries? I know you're a fan of the Metroid games in general, but what about like the Prime subseries specifically?
It's kind of funky because like I grew up with the Super Nintendo era was like where I started. But you know how it goes when you were a kid. It's like you either happened to get a copy of the game or you had a friend that had it and you borrowed it. Like, I just like never knew anyone that really had Super Metroid. So like I didn't play Super Metroid until I was like in high school, and it was because EGM ranked it the best game of all time. Like they had like a top 50 or something like that. And so I went and tracked down a physical copy and I played it. And it was like late high school. I was like a senior or something. And that was like around the time Prime had come out, and I heard all just people loving it, but I didn't have a GameCube. I didn't get a GameCube until Wind Waker came out. I think Prime came out before Wind Waker, didn't it? I'm almost certain it did. I could be wrong about that.
Prime was 2004, maybe 2003.
Yeah. So I was late to Metroid, and then I played a lot of catch up. I played Zero Mission. I played Fusion, and then I dabbled with Prime. I played like the first like hour or something like that. But my first Prime game was actually 3. I bought Metroid Prime 3 the day it came out and blasted through it and really enjoyed it. And then in 2019, somewhat recently, I played Metroid Prime 1 for the first time. So like I'm definitely much more of a 2D Metroid guy in general. I really like Dread a lot. Dread is still my favorite Metroid game, I think.
That's surprising because like I know that people love Dread, but I feel like Super Metroid is just like the gold standard that so many people default to.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have nostalgia for Super Metroid. Is what it comes down to. Like I played it very late. It was almost kind of like I want to write about video games as like a job. I should probably play what many consider to be the best game of all time. And I really like Super Metroid a lot, but it wasn't one that defined sort of my gaming taste, Andy McNamara, former editor-in-chief of Game Informer, he answers that question a lot, as I'm sure you do as well, Brian, of like, what's your favorite game of all time? And his answer is usually Metroid 1 for the NES. Like that's what got him on the track of like loving video games. Like I just didn't have that relationship with Metroid personally, but I like Metroid a lot. I came to it late, kind of.
Yeah, I always remember Andy just, like singing the praises of Metroid 1, and as somebody who did not grow up with Metroid 1, because I also got into the Metroid series pretty late. My first real encounter with it was Metroid Zero Mission, because like you, I didn't have anybody who had Super Metroid growing up. I still haven't beaten Super Metroid. I've played it several times. I've just never gotten all the way through to the end.
Yeah.
But I've played through Zero Mission, and I think that's an incredible remake. And it's hard to really go
Zero
back
after
you've played any Metroid game with a map. It's hard to go back to that original NES Metroid 1.
I've never even bothered attempting other than like, just like sort of like, oh, what did this look like? And you go get the morph ball, right? You go left and you get the morph ball, then you play a little, and I'm like, well, okay, I get it. It's old.
Yeah, but they've definitely figured out the conventions, and they apply them extremely well to the Metroid Prime series. Like, I think that the first time I played Metroid 1 or Metroid Prime 1, I was like, oh wow, this, like, they really did transfer like all of the core tenets of Metroid, the exploration, the map system, like all the abilities and how they unlock different things, and you have to backtrack and find the things that
Yeah.
you can now access because you have this new ability. Like they did such a good job of transferring that to like, I guess at that era was really like the Halo formula, which
Yeah.
was
I mean,
kind of weird.
I think there's an argument to be made that it is the best direct translation of like a 2D game into a 3D game. Because even something like Mario or Zelda, like 3D Mario feels pretty different than 2D Mario and has a lot of different things that make it fun. And you could say the same about Zelda, right? Like they had to do a lot of things to make Zelda fit in a 3D world to the point where it feels fairly different than like 2D Zelda. But like Metroid Prime does feel like a direct 3-dimensional translation of like 2D Metroid in an impressive way for sure.
And I've said it multiple times, but like tied for my highest score in my entire career at Game Informer is Metroid Prime 1 remastered. Like I think that is just one of the greatest remasters of all time because like they did the thing where it feels so good in modern times and looks so good in modern times. But if you strip away all those enhancements, it's still the exact same game that came out back in the early 2000s on GameCube, and that's remarkable that it still looks and
nailed it.
Feels so good even with just those minor enhancements. But Kyle, let's talk about Metroid Prime 4. That's the reason you're here. You, like me, are quite positive on this game.
Yeah, I like it.
And talk to me about like your overall impressions of this title that we've been waiting for 8 years to finally get.
Yeah, well, 18 if you think about
18 since Metroid Prime 3, but 8 years since its announcement, which is crazy because it was already overdue for a sequel when it was announced because it was a 10-year break at that point, and now it's 18 years later.
Famously like restarted development and got Retro back on board. Metroid Prime 4 is good. I really like it. It is not sort of like this huge innovation, right? It is a continuation of Metroid Prime in a complementary way. I maybe my expectations were coloring me a little bit, but I felt like because the wait was so long and we were finally on like a new platform, I played it on Switch 2. I was kind of hoping for like something that felt like revelatory almost, like kind of like you think of like I mean it's an impossible metric to compare yourself to, but like Breath of the Wild compared to the previous Zeldas and how it was such a radical reimagining of like what was a great series. And even Mario Odyssey, while it is hews closer to Galaxy and Sunshine and stuff, feels different and feels like they're doing something new. It doesn't really feel like Metroid Prime 4 is doing a ton new, but that's okay. Like that's not like a reason to dislike the game. It's just like maybe I did want a little more, but it's like this feels like a good continuation of what Retro figured out with the first 3 Metroid Prime games. Like they haven't lost anything in all that time that they were away from it,
Yeah, it almost makes me wonder, like, because Retro is so good at making these Metroid Prime games, why didn't Nintendo go to them in the first place? Like, what was Retro working on that was like so important that they were like, hey, we're going to bring back Metroid Prime, but we're going to give it to somebody else? Like, wasn't it Bandai Namco or something?
Yes, yeah, Bandai Namco. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, it might have taken some convincing. I mean, maybe they didn't want to do another Metroid Prime. They did the trilogy. They had made 2 amazing Donkey Kong Country games. Like maybe they were ready to try something new. I have no idea. Like, and we probably will never know, which is sad. But yeah, or they were busy. Yeah, or because they have like a rumored Star Fox racing game that they were making for a while or something like that. Who knows if there's any legitimacy there, but like they're an interesting studio because they're really good, but they don't get deployed a ton in a weird way.
And Nintendo acquired them, which is kind of a rare thing. Like, and it's one of those situations where like we've seen Xbox do these acquisitions and it just is catastrophic. Layoffs and studio closures and stuff like that. Nintendo acquires a studio and it seems like they just maybe there's something else going on behind the scenes, but it seems like they really like support the studios and they allow them to continue creating and the stuff that are the reasons that they acquired those studios in the first place.
When did they acquire Retro? When was that? Was that a long time ago or was that recently?
I think it was a little while ago.
Okay, because I know, it is Rare. When Nintendo, like, it's funny because they owned Rare for a while, didn't they?
They did.
But it's like it is a headline when it's like Nintendo bought a studio. Like when they bought the Luigi's Mansion 3 studio, we were kind of like, oh, okay, cool,
Yeah,
but
so
yeah, I mean, it's neither here nor there. But like, yeah, it is interesting to compare it to sort of, Xbox acquisitions, where it's like it's almost like a death note for those studios, sadly. But Nintendo, they get locked in and they make franchise games for a long time.
Nintendo acquired them in 2002, 4 years after the studio was founded.
Okay, so that was all right. That was interesting. Okay, cool. Good for them.
Yeah, and they've worked on just alternating basically between Metroid Prime and Donkey Kong Country games ever since.
Yeah.
Not doing a whole lot of either of those, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, they made 5 fantastic games,
Yeah. But Metroid Prime 4, they did try to differentiate it a little bit. Obviously, the graphics are fantastic. I think that you and I agree this might be the best looking game Nintendo has ever put out in terms of like graphical prowess.
Fidelity.
Like it's absolutely gorgeous. That was my key takeaway when I played it at the Switch 2 reveal event back in April. That was like a surprise thing that they had Metroid Prime 4 playable. And I remember like starting it and I was like, oh man, this like opening cutscene is incredible. And that just carries forward through the entire thing. It also helps that the game, if you have a TV that's capable of it on Switch 2, it can output up to 120 frames per second, which is pretty impressive. And
it's very cool.
I haven't noticed any like performance hitches or anything like that on the Switch 2. I haven't played the Switch 1 version. So, take that with a grain of salt if you only have a Switch 1.
Yeah, it is polished as hell. It is a really solid game. Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. But they also tried to move it forward a little bit with this open world-ish, like literal sandbox in the middle of all the levels. Like it's an actual desert. And you can, get your motorcycle after a few hours of play and cruise through that. And there's not a whole lot of stuff out there. There's a few enemies that'll like jump in front of you and there's some green crystals that you have to collect, but outside of that, it's just
a handful of puzzles. Like they're not like don't think shrines in Zelda. It's nothing like that. But and it's like it is not open world Metroid, to be clear. Like it is a hub area between levels. Like I've called it out a couple times, but it feels like Ocarina of Time in terms of structure. The Hyrule Field with Epona is, Samus with the Viola motorcycle in the desert. Like it's a nice way to, I do like it quite a bit because it's a nice way to not have to move through levels that you've already sort of like completed to get to another point where you want to go. Because it's just how usually Metroid is usually structured. Here, it's like, okay, I'm done with like the storm factory. I need to go over to the volcano. I'll just instead of like having to travel through a bunch of like mazes to get there, you get on the motorcycle and you drive over there. And it's like it's not too big, so things don't feel like they take too long. But it's big enough where it's like you can explore a little bit. It is secondary is kind of like a way to put it. It's not like the primary innovation of Metroid Prime 4. It's like a secondary innovation that's good, but doesn't radically change how you approach a Metroid Prime game.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel out of place, I don't think. No. Like I think a lot of people were worried about two things after the previews. One, this motorcycle, because nobody got their hands on the motorcycle before the review period. And two, Miles McKenzie, who is this NPC that a lot of people encountered and wrote about in this hands-on preview session that happened last month. And like, he was a little bit of a chatterbox. So people were like, oh, is that going to diminish the fact that like, Metroid games are about Samus exploring and like kind of being alone and like a solitary, like atmospheric experience? Is that going to be diminished if this nerdy dude is just chatting in your ear the whole time? And outside of the initial push where you're with him, that does not seem to be the case. You've played a lot more than I have, but like how impactful are these NPCs that you encounter?
In a complimentary way, they're not very impactful at all. I understand that fear from that preview event where people are like, oh gosh, is this guy going to be in my ear the whole time? Am I always going to have to be interacting with Miles? Because when he's introduced, he does talk a lot and he feels like he's kind of almost set up to be like, hey, I'm going to help you out the rest of the game. But ultimately, like, no, you kind of leave him at this home base that you revisit periodically. He calls you occasionally. If you seem lost, he might chime in and be like, hey, have you checked out the volcano yet? Like that's kind of a cool idea that I had, that you should go check out the volcano. And then also I actually did appreciate that you can call him if you're not sure where to go, which actually is nice. But I will say that fear of Miles sort of ruining the experience, like, you don't have to worry about that. He's really there as an early tutorial, and then he steps back significantly, and you really don't have to talk to him very much at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were picturing him as like Navi from Ocarina of Time, and he is that in the sense that, like, if you're lost, you can ask for help, but not that in the sense that he's going to be interrupting you and like giving you hints or like. I think that we were talking yesterday, and it was like, yeah, he's not Atreus from God of War.
No. The most he offers, like, without your sort of interjection, like the most he offers without you asking for it, is he might suggest you head towards a location. That's the extent of it. Like, he'll say, like, yeah, head to the volcano. I think there's something there, but that's all he offers.
Which I appreciate, because like there have been so many times where I'm like, because these areas are so far apart, I don't want to be backtracking like left and right and like across the entire map. And I don't want to have to like navigate through these mazes. And I've had that sometimes with my playthrough where I'm like, where the heck am I supposed to go?
Yeah.
And
Metroid
then like
that's part of the experience. Yeah. For better and worse, you know?
But like there were times where I'm like starting to get to like the end of my wits with like, I don't know where I'm supposed to go. And then he's like, hey, go check out the volcano. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll go check out the volcano. And then they've done a good job in this like sandbox environment of having these points of interest. There's another one's like, hey, why don't you go check out like the snowy mountains?
Yeah.
And you're like looking around like, okay, where's like the big point of interest? And they're all like areas where it's like, it's very clear to see over the horizon. Like, oh, there's like a snowy mountain. There's a volcano.
Yeah.
So
like because the map is small, it and like each of the things look very distinct. It's easy to just be like, oh yeah, I'll head it. And like there's this big tree that marks your home base kind of. So it's like, okay, as long as I'm driving towards the tree, like, because you can't like put a marker on the map in the traditional sense and it'll sort of ping and you can drive towards it. Basically what you do is you pull up the map and you're like, oh, I need to head east, and then you drive east, and it's totally functional that way. Like it's totally fine.
Now, combat, I think it feels great. Did you have any problems with how the combat feels?
No, it feels good. I get a little frustrated with gameplay in Metroid Prime in that it encourages you to like tap a lot, right? Like bam, 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 bam to shoot, which I've become accustomed to certainly in shooters, to not have to like pull the trigger so much. So I'm like, I don't love that, but like otherwise I'm very happy with how it feels. The lock-on system is cool. It has always been cool, and it makes it like feel unique in the shooter space to this day. But like you can also, more so than any of the previous Metroid Primes, I mean 3 was maybe the closest, you can play it like a shooter. Like you can play it like a dual analog stick shooter if you want. It's totally functional that way. And then the other control options are fine too. Like using the Joy-Cons as pointer, Metroid Prime 3 style works fine. Using it as a mouse is a totally solid way to play. I think you and I both just ended up, playing with a controller because that's just like the easiest and most straightforward, fun way to play. But the other options are good too.
Yeah, the mouse controls work fantastic.
Yeah, they're good.
You can use it on your pant legs, but like I don't know. I feel like I need a table to really get the right experience. So I haven't done too much with that because I don't have a coffee table in front of my TV where I game most of the time. I have
one of those like folding tables, like a like I usually will use that. Like that's how I was playing a lot of Drag X Drive, which we all remember and will remember forever, and definitely came up during our end of the year discussions.
I'm sure to win tons of awards, the Game Awards especially. But I guess like when you're not in this giant open biome, like this like sand desert area exploring, there are these like dungeons, for lack of a better word. Like there's an electricity one, there's a ice one, a fire one, and like the forest biome. How did you feel about the design of these things? Also, like your favorite, I think, is the motorcycle factory.
Yeah, that one's like pretty clear winner because it's like this like factory in the clouds that's like powered by just perpetual lightning storms. It's really cool. So that was like an early favorite. That's like the sort of the first big area you kind of explored. You're like, whoa, this is wild. And then the other ones are kind of like, there's a lava zone, there's an ice zone, there's mines, and they're kind of forgettable. I mean, they look great and they're fun to explore. They're sort of immaculately designed in terms of like the pace and like pushing you in certain directions. But in terms of like standout visually, yeah, that first one kind of sets a high bar that it never quite reaches again.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, every game of this style has a fire dungeon and every game of this style has an ice dungeon. And it's like you can trace that back to Mario or Zelda or anything. And it's like, okay, but like not every game has a cyberpunk motorcycle factory powered by lightning lightning strikes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's pretty rare. Pretty rare. I've only seen like 5 or 6 of those.
But overall, you seem like you like it quite a bit. And I know that you had some problems with the fact that it doesn't allow you to go back after you beat the game to 100%, like the discoveries.
Yeah, heads up if you're like starting it there, it will give you a point of no return warning. It'll say like, hey, heads up, this is the end game here. Just know that once you go on that path, once you opt to do that, you cannot go back into the save and revisit the open world and go back and get 100%, which is why I immediately restarted the game kind of out of frustration, because I like to play Metroid sort of inspired games in this genre. I like to beat them and then spend a bunch of time mopping up all the stuff I missed. Like I enjoyed that process, and I felt a little robbed of it in Prime 4. But you can avoid it by knowing my mistake. So you're welcome.
And one last thing that we haven't touched on before we get out of here or let you go, and then I go on to the next segment, the psychic powers. That's another innovation that they have here. From my experience, I think they complement the combat well. They're fun new abilities that Samus can get that she hasn't had in previous games. But how did you feel about this introduction of being able to use telekinesis?
It's fine. It they kind of like you said, they complement your other powers. They kind of overlap with the other powers in a way that's not particularly radical or innovative. The biggest one is like being able to control the sort of the missile, which I've done in other games, and it's fun and it's like really well implemented here. But it's certainly, like, I was talking to Marcus Stewart over at Game Informer recently, and it was one of those things where it's like, if these were to not appear in a future Metroid Prime game, assuming that there would be more, I wouldn't be like heartbroken. I wouldn't feel like, oh, you got to have these psychic powers. That's like they're like they define Metroid now. No, that doesn't really feel like that. But they're well implemented and they're not very complicated. So I like them, but they don't really change the game, so to speak.
Yeah, it was kind of my thing when like Tears of the Kingdom came out and everybody was like talking about Ultra Hand, and I was just like, yeah, they might need to give Zelda a break so that there's no like expectation of Ultra Hand in like the next Zelda game.
I know. Yeah, a lot of people I've heard have that opinion of like, they can't do Zelda without Ultra Hand. And now it's like, oh yeah, we'll see. I mean, we felt the same way about the previous suite of abilities. But yeah.
Well, if they want to read your full review, they can head over to GameInformer.com. You gave it an 8.75 out of 10, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, video review should be up by this time too on our YouTube, on Game Informer's YouTube channel.
Awesome. Well, Kyle, let everybody know where they can find you online.
KyleHilliard.com on Blue Sky.
All right. Well, we are going to take our second break of this episode, and when we get back, I will be joined by Marcus Stewart to talk about Marvel Cosmic Invasion. We will be right back.
In Walmart's Huluville, time was ticking away. Only a few nights left till the big holiday. But last-minute gifters had no need to worry. Walmart Express Delivery got their gifts in a hurry. From Nintendo to Nespresso and Lego Flowers, they could check off their lists in as fast as an hour. All of Huluville, East, West, South, and North, could order gifts up until 5 p.m. on December 24th. So this holiday, just do as the Who's do. With gift delivery this fast, they all gasped. From Walmart? Who knew? Subject to availability, terms and fees apply.
We are back, and Metroid Prime 4 Beyond may be the biggest Nintendo release of this week. But there's another big game with some heavy-hitting names on the roster. That is Marvel Cosmic Invasion. That is the side-scrolling beat-em-up from the team that brought us TMNT Shredder's Revenge. And joining me for this segment is Game Informer Senior Associate Editor Marcus Stewart. Marcus, how are you doing?
Feeling good. I don't hear my titles spoken out loud much, so I always forget, like, yeah, senior, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really give like the titles when I introduce people, but I don't know. The mood struck me today when I was like, let's introduce him with the full title. But Marcus, you have been playing Cosmic Invasion. You wrote the review for Game Informer. I've been playing Cosmic Invasion. I did not write the review for Game Informer, but I've played through the vast majority of it. Give me your overall thoughts on this. Well, actually, first, let's start here, because I had you on this show a couple of years ago to talk about TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which is the last big side-scrolling beat-em-up from this studio, Tribute Games. Talk to me about like what your main takeaways were from Shredder's Revenge.
Shredder's Revenge, which I also reviewed, I thought was a very, like, a great modern version of just childhood nostalgia that being the old TMNT beat 'em ups back then, of like, let's take something that still feels like it's of that era, but then at the same time, when you dig into it, it's modernized enough to where like, oh no, actually this probably couldn't have happened back then. And just like pretty much do what even as a kid you might have thought like it'd be cool if they did this, but they can't. Of like, what if there were 6 players and you could play online and all the turtles just feel more distinct from each other and it looked better, and it was just like the realization of that style of game to like kind of the highest degree at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up playing the games like TMNT 89 and Turtles in Time. So I was extremely excited when they announced that project, and it came out, and I think it's probably a top 3 beat 'em up of all time for me. Like, I really, really love Shredder's Revenge. I think the soundtrack is incredible.
Yeah.
Done by the person who did the soundtrack of this very podcast, T. Lopes. He does the theme song for this show. So shout out to T. Lopes. Wonderful human being as well. And now he came back for Cosmic Invasion, and so did Tribute Games. So it's funny because when I first learned about Shredder's Revenge, it was actually before it was announced. And I had mentioned, I was like, oh, well, if you're going to be like making a new TMNT beat 'em up, the next logical place would be like a Marvel beat 'em up or a Simpsons beat 'em up. And I remember those are both under like the Disney, the Disney label, right? Because Disney owns 21st Century Fox. I don't know, whatever they're called, but also
technically 2 of them.
Anything Marvel is under the Disney umbrella as well, which, that Disney and Marvel have been expanding more into the gaming space in recent years. I think it all kind of really started with that first Insomniac Spider-Man game where they're like, okay, we're really going to start taking things seriously with our gaming division. And we got like Avengers, which, is a very divisive game, largely negative, but it's ambitious, if nothing else. And there was obviously monetary investment and resource investment in that game. Guardians of the Galaxy ended up suffering from the sins of Marvel, or Marvel's Avengers. But Guardians of the Galaxy is a fantastic game.
Oh, yeah. I love that game.
Yeah, we got 2 more Spider-Man games from Insomniac, and we have a Wolverine game on the way. Marvel's Midnight Suns is a very good game, even though it didn't sell particularly well. So we've gotten plenty of very good, or at least very highly invested in Marvel games. And so it's kind of refreshing to see a smaller studio like Tribute Games and a smaller publishing label like Dotemu get a crack at, not the most... I'm assuming not the highest budget game, not the biggest production in terms of creating this game, but still just mechanically extremely sound. And it accomplishes 100% what it sets out to do, which is just recreate and recapture that magical feeling that we got from those 90s arcade brawlers. And from at least my experience, it nails it. But you've played more of it than I have. So give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I would echo that. And what I like about this game is that it still feels like its own sort of game. Like it doesn't just feel like Shredder's Revenge, but with Marvel, because the sort of like the big twist with this one is the tag team gameplay. That is, you can control 2 characters at once that you can swap between. And what I love about that as a fighting game fan is how much it feels like the old Marvel tag fighters, like Marvel vs. Capcom, probably most famously, but you get into like Avengers vs. X-Men and stuff. And it's got the same, like, you can tag characters in for an assist, you can swap between them outright, so you have 2 health bars to manage, and you only get a game over if they both go down. But it's a very, like, even the inputs are kind of fighting game inspired. Like, it's not just hitting a punch button and moving forward. It's like, oh, you have launchers, so you can air juggle people, and if you time your tags right, you can just extend your air juggles. Even though characters probably die after the 5th hit, you can just keep like bouncing their corpses around, and it feels really good. Or you have different special attacks that you have to manage, and like cooldowns for those abilities. So you have to kind of keep a conscious eye. You have a block. You have a parry. You have a parry and a beat 'em up, and it feels good
for some characters, right? Like
for some characters, yeah.
Some have a parry, other ones have like a dodge. Like,
yeah.
That's the thing that I think is really, really great about this is, like, you play TMNT Shredder's Revenge, which, again, one of my favorite beat 'em ups of all time. but all the turtles handle more or less similar to each other, right? Like like some of them have a little bit more range, some of them have a little bit more speed or more like oomph behind their attacks, but they all have a general similar move set. Whereas with Cosmic Invasion, not only is the roster a lot bigger, it's like 15 heroes at launch, but it's also like these characters are so different from each other. Like if you're playing as Phoenix, like you can fly around, you can blast fire out. And then if you're playing as Rocket Raccoon, you have guns, you can run around, you can drop bombs. If you're playing as Captain America, you can throw your shield like bat and then bounce it off.
Can parry things with it.
Yeah, and then like characters like Spider-Man, like you don't really have a parry in that, but you have a really like agile dodge, and you can like web across the screen. Like they really, I feel like, captured the essence of what these characters are, and that's what like a Marvel game should do, right? Like all the characters should feel extremely different. They should have unique power sets and different things that they're good at. Like, you know, if you have like a reconnaissance mission, you don't want to send somebody like Captain Marvel into that. You want to send Captain America. Whereas like if you're fighting a giant cosmic threat, like Captain Marvel's maybe the better choice for that. And that they kind of boil that down in the way that they have these characters have their different powers, where it's like, okay, Storm can like summon tornadoes and shoot electricity and fly, but like, you know, maybe there's a character that like that's not as useful around, so you want to be like Venom or something like that instead.
Yeah, there's a thoughtfulness to team composition and kind of who you bring in. Like I said, this is a game where like the characters are so distinct that you will find your mains in the way that you would a fighting game of someone that like whose playstyle just speaks to you. And because you can also level up characters, which is also something you don't really see in the genre. You can kind of like invest time into a character where like, oh, I really like, you know, Phyla-Vell. I'm gonna just pick her and get her maxed out so she gets like all these like passive upgrades and like bigger health bars and all that stuff. So you feel rewarded for sticking with a certain character. But yeah, I like kind of on point of just being more mechanically interesting. It's true to the characters. Like they control the way that you would expect them to as a comic book fan. Like Phoenix, you mentioned before, like I love her because she feels like the powerhouse she should be, especially because she has like this telekinetic grab where she like just force chokes people. Like she can like grab them from the other side of the screen, and then you can just toss them into like pits, which I love doing, by the way, because I don't know if you've done this, Brian, but when you like knock people into pits, sometimes they'll like spin across the rim of it like a basketball before they go in sometimes, and it's really satisfying. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, but you go like, that's great. I love that that's a thing that can happen. Yeah, and it like the combat just feels good. Like I said, it's the beat 'em ups can be like they can be the most fun and the most boring genre for the same reasons. And it really comes down to like whether or not you just enjoy these types of games, or like the fun of it is the kind of mindless button mashing and just pummeling the same guys over and over. But for a lot of people, that's a turnoff. And I think this game, because of how much more mechanically interesting it is and how the enemies kind of challenge you to not just spam everything nonstop, that still works to a degree. And especially when you add more people to the equation, but like, especially when you're playing by yourself, you do have to kind of be a little bit more mindful about like, okay, I'm going to save my specials now, or I'm not going to do this, or I need to maybe, instead of like running at this guy and punching him blindly, I should probably like wait for him to hit me so I can parry, because some of them do that. Like there's enemies with shields that you got to kind of reposition around. Like one of the early boss fights, Taskmaster, is a good example of like, you really can't just run up on him. He's a lot more of a tactical fighter. So it's a very, like I fought him with Captain America, and it became this very like intense sort of like duel where we're just like blocking and parrying each other and trying to find openings. It was like, man, this is really neat. And yeah, I just like how much more, like there's a lot more depth to this game than almost any other beat 'em up that's out there. And it's also like it's one of the most fun beat 'em ups I've ever played by myself because of it, which is like a thing that's never really fun, even in some of the best beat 'em ups, is playing by yourself. It's just a genre that's just inherently built to have at least one other person in there with you. But because of just like there is an enjoyable learning curve to like, oh, I just kind of want to play alone and kind of figure out this character's nuances and see if they speak to me, which is easier to do when it's less chaotic and there's less players to kind of like distract you. And then you get the reward of when you do level up a character, you can bring them into other people's games and say like, oh, let me help you with this tough boss because I've got like a fully leveled up Iron Man, and we can take down, I don't know, Sauron together. It's cool. It's a very fun beat 'em up, and it's also just a really good love letter to Marvel. Like the roster, I love how diverse it is. I love how there's characters you don't normally see in these games, like Beta Ray Bill and Phyla Vell and She-Hulk, like alongside the sort of like the main eventers of Iron Man and Captain America. And it lives up to the cosmic sort of storytelling because you've got like Nova and Silver Surfer and kind of the more space faring heroes in there. So it's a roster that feels like it stands on its own because of that, and not just a copy paste of another Marvel roster from a bunch of other Marvel games. It's cool. Like it's a very fun beat 'em up, and it's like if you have any interest in this genre, or especially if you're just a Marvel fan in general, like you absolutely should play this.
Yeah, and you touched on something that like they really captured the essence of these characters, and they did something that remedies one of my biggest problems with the genre, which is in the early days, like when you wanted to use like your special move, it would be like it would almost punish you for doing that, right? Like it would be like, all right, if you want to use like Leonardo's like sweeping like sword attack, it's going to cost you 2 parts of your health bar. And it's like, why does that hurt me? If
well, you know the real reason why.
Because they wanted you to put more coins in.
Exactly.
But now it's like, okay, well, this is the much better way to do it, where it's like it operates on a cooldown rather than, or like a gauge, like, your ultimate meter. I forget what the actual in-game.
Yeah, like a mana bar, basically.
Yeah, it's like this bar that charges based on, I think, enemies you defeat or something, or like pickups that you get. I forget what
there
exactly.
are some pickups that replenish it immediately. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then like Spidey's web shooters, for example, you just could fire those off at a push of a button, but you only have like, I think like 3 or 5 at any given moment. So like once you deplete that, you have to wait for them to recharge.
Yeah.
And same thing for a lot of the enemies, or a lot of the characters like special abilities. And then the other thing that you touched on a little bit that I wanted to call out is the leveling system, because I think that is a really great innovation, because we have talked about this before, Marcus, where like some of these levels, and especially the boss fights, can be pretty challenging, especially if you're playing solo. And when you die, you have to start the level over. And normally that would be like this sucks. Like I'm going to get all the way to the end and die again. It's just going to be this endless loop until I finally just like get lucky and smash through it. But even if you make it all the way to the level, die before you beat the level, and have to start over, those characters get experience points and will very often level up. So they're actually stronger the next time you try that level. And that gives me a little bit of like a glimmer of hope of like, okay, well, this character, like I struggled like one of the boss fights. I don't want to spoil who it was, but like it's, probably a mid-game boss fight. And I kept getting to the very end and he would kill me. I think he beat me like 3 times. And every time I was like, oh, am I just like going to have to take a break from this game because I don't want to like brute force my way through it. But then every time I would get to that, and it's like, all right, well, Wolverine just leveled up and now his like health is better and his attack is better. And it's like, oh, well, that actually makes me more encouraged to continue and like try to fight this boss again, because I feel like I have a better chance now. And I think that's a really smart way to do it.
It feels like the game wants you to win, whereas like you said, the old beat 'em ups just wanted your money.
Yeah.
I was also
going to get. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was also going to say, like, in terms of remedies, another good thing, like you mentioned flying enemies. I love, or flying characters, I should say. The characters that can fly, which if you're a comic fan, you can probably look at the roster and just know immediately who has that ability. But like, what's nice about that is that it sort of solves what I've always found to be probably the most annoying enemies in any beat 'em up, which is any enemy that can fly, because you always have to do the annoying dance of just trying to jump kick desperately, and sometimes it's hard to tell if you're on the same plane as they are when they're flying. Yeah, you're like, I think I can, and it always feels like you get it by accident. Like it rarely ever feels like skill. You're like, oh, I just finally happened to get them this time. Or like when you pick a character that can fly, you just like fly up right to him and you can just punch him in the face like you normally would anyone on the ground. I think that is such a great solution to an age-old problem.
It is. Roster wise, it's a good mix of the mainstays, the marquee characters like the Iron Man, the Wolverine, the Spider-Man, and Captain America, and then also, like you mentioned, like Phyla-Vell, She-Hulk. Who
Like
else?
Beta Ray Bill, Cosmic
like
Ghost Rider.
Yeah, getting those characters. I mean, I don't know who Phyla-Vell's replacement would have been for like a more marquee character.
Probably Captain Marvel.
Yeah, Captain Marvel. Yeah, and then like Beta Ray Bill obviously would have been Thor. She-Hulk obviously would have been regular Hulk. So like, I wonder if we're gonna get DLC for this. I would assume so because TMNT got DLC, and like all the main characters were already in that game. Like they just added like Casey Jones and
or not even added. He was in the game. You just had to unlock him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought he was DLC. Maybe I'm thinking of Splintered Fate, the roguelike, the Hades inspired game.
Yeah, Shredder's Revenge added like Usabi Yojimbo and Karai and like
that's right.
Yeah, like a few others, like the alligator guy, whatever his name is. But no, to your point, like that game got so much DLC that, obviously the Marvel Universe is expansive. So they have, an embarrassment of riches to pull from if they wanted to add characters. I mean, I would think just because of, the movie coming out this year, the Fantastic Four would be a good start for them.
Yeah, I guess they don't have any representation, do they?
No. So it's like you got 4 characters. That's 2 teams, technically.
2027 has a lot of big Marvel stuff coming. Like we're supposed to get the final Spider-Verse movie. We're getting a new Spider-Man like live action movie, and we're getting Avengers Doomsday. So like, and Daredevil has a new season coming out in early 2026, I think.
Yeah, and if they wanted to, because like I said, the roster's like half of sort of like who are the cosmic characters, like the kind of that side of the Marvel universe. Like they still have like a lot to pull from there. They could do, like the other Guardians of the Galaxy, because only Rocket is in the game. So if they wanted to pull in Star-Lord, they could do that, or Gamora.
That'd be great.
Yeah, or they could pull in like one of the like other Captain Marvel-esque characters that Phyla-Vell is. Like
the entire Marvel mobile game economy is built around the fact that there are a bajillion characters in the Marvel universe that they can pull from. Without that giant amount of characters, things like Marvel Strike Force, Marvel Contest of Champions, Marvel Snap would just collapse because there's not enough content to just constantly feed these communities. And so I could see it where they are just going to constantly pull. I mean, that was the entire premise of Marvel's Avengers, right? Was like, oh, we're going to start with these characters, but we're going to slowly roll out all these other characters. And they did that for about 2 years. And then they're like, oh, nobody's playing this game.
And in a questionable order too, of like, we added Hawkeye and Kate Bishop back to back, and it's like you couldn't break that up.
Yeah, so I could see a world like, say you had 5 characters. You were in charge of the DLC for this game. What are the 5 characters you're adding?
So I just thought of one that would be great for the cosmic side. Adam Warlock.
Yes,
great choice. That would be a really cool pull. I would also, for another cosmic sort of curveball, one of the Eternals, maybe maybe either Ajax or Cersei.
Cersei seems like the best one because she was like the main character of the movie. Icarus is like the obvious like Superman,
or Icarus,
but he's not a good guy in the end of that movie, so I don't know if they would put him in as a
Venom's in the
hero.
Game.
That's true.
And yeah, he's a hero, sort of.
I mean, so is Phoenix, but Phoenix is good in some parts, but also an existential threat in other comics.
So yeah, I will say Ajax and an Eternal. And then also, I thought about Star Fox. Yeah,
the Harry Styles famously portrayed
that
by
version
Harry Styles?
Specifically. Harry Styles is from the post-credit scene.
Really? What about Star Fox makes you want not the Star Fox that we know in the Nintendo world, but
the one that came first.
But what about that character makes you think that that's like a great addition here?
It would just be a great deep cut, which is something this game does well. Like Phyla-Vell is a bit of a deep cut. She was introduced in the early 2000s, but she's just the daughter of Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel. And then she's sometimes known as Quasar, who we saw a version of in the Marvels. And technically the MCU does have its Phyla-Vell because she's the little girl at the end of Guardians 3. So like, I don't know, Star Fox just feels like, oh, that would be a cool sort of like, almost like a flex for like comic fans of like, yeah, we're digging into crates. We're not just going with the like the people that like the casuals know, quote unquote. It's like, and maybe Pip the Troll can be with them. Maybe it's like a tag. That's the tag team. It's Pip the Troll and Star Fox. And I guess the FF would be great because I love the FF. I've always had a soft spot for the Fantastic Four. So I don't know if we want to count them as one entry. they technically are 4 slots, but
it's hard to. It's really hard to like just choose one of them.
If I could only have one, I think Reed, because of his stretching, would be a really fun melee thing, and Sue, because
Sue would be great.
Sue's a fun character. She was always low key the best character in the Ultimate Alliance, in the first Ultimate Alliance. She was low key the best character. She was great in that game, almost broken, honestly.
I think that like it would be cool to have some sort of form of like Sue being able to provide shields for her teammates.
Yeah,
that would be cool, and also like
bubbles around them.
She's extremely powerful as well. But here's my 5 that I just wrote down that I think is a good spread here. I'm going to say Daredevil.
Okay.
And he has kind of like that similar thing of like Steve Rogers where he can like throw his baton and it'll bounce off things.
Plus he has a little bit of that cosmic connection because there's that period when he was Heimdall. Like he had Heimdall's sword in Thor and he could see everything like Heimdall. It happened to
interesting.
Yeah, there's
I'm gonna go. Yeah, he's kind of a cosmic character. Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah.
That would be fun. Like all the different spells you could pull on that. And then 2 more. I'm gonna go Thor. I'm gonna go Gamora.
Would you be worried Thor would be too similar to Beta Ray Bill?
I mean, that's what they're going for, though, right? Like, I think that all these characters are going to have some similarities with others, but like, I think Thor and Gamora would be great cosmic entries. I think Daredevil and Doctor Strange would be kind of the differentiating ones, but like, I think people would see Thor and they would be excited, right? Like, it wouldn't just be like, oh, that's a Beta Ray Bill clone. Like, they have characters that they could provide different movesets. Like, they have like Venom and Spider-Man are in this game, and if they wanted to, they could have just had them be kind of like, all right, Venom's the exact same as Spider-Man, but he is slower and more powerful and has like a couple of like additional moves. He's completely distinct in this game.
He's the Marvel vs. Capcom Venom specifically, like straight up.
100%.
Yeah.
And which brings me to my final one that I want, and that is Miles Morales. I want Spider-Man Miles. I think that he could do some cool stuff with like his what are they called? Venom, even though Venom is the character, but he has the Venom web shocks.
Yeah, his bioelectric stuff.
That stuff could be really cool while also still having all the like agility and like he can turn invisible and all that stuff. Like there's some cool stuff they could do with all those characters. But that's my like trying to be balanced, but also like a wish list of like what I would want. But like in reality, it's like I just want like the original wave of Avengers. Like give me Black Widow, give me Hawkeye. Characters like that also would be very cool to have in there. But like like you said, there are so many characters in the Marvel universe that they could really just like they could double this roster and still have amazing characters left to add.
Yeah, just keep adding these stages. Like there's no shortage of locations obviously in the Marvel universe, so just keep even introduce a whole new villain. Just be like, oh no, it's this person's here, gotta stop him.
I mean, yeah, they could add story DLC, like have it so that like
they did for the Turtles.
They could do so much. Like that's another thing that we haven't really talked about too much. And I don't want to spoil too much of this game, but I was living for how many character like enemies that popped up, and some of them are like, oh yeah, that's cool because that's like a main villain, like Taskmaster you already talked about. It's like, yeah, that is a big bad in the Marvel universe. And then there's other characters that pop up and you're like, oh, that character that I vaguely remember hearing about one time. And they do a really great job of like combining like deep cuts along with like the mainstay villains. And that makes me really happy because it kind of is a really good mirror to the hero roster.
Yeah.
And I think that they could do some cool stuff with that. I have not gotten to the end of this game, but like maybe they add like, all right, here's like the Magneto arc and here's the Doctor Doom arc that they could add. And they could do what Marvel's Avengers was setting out to do, where it's like, all right, yeah, and like, here's like the big like Kree invasion arc that they started and then like never really finished because they canceled the post-launch support. They could pull that off with this because it's not as big of a production. And I'm assuming this game is going to do better, at least in terms of like versus expectations, than Avengers did. Because if it does worse, then I think Marvel games in general is going to be in trouble. But I mean, this is a a better game right off the bat than Marvel's Avengers ever was, which is unfortunate because that game had so much potential. But yeah, Cosmic Invasion, I am having a great time with it. You liked it quite a bit. What'd you give it on your Game Informer review?
So I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Like I said, good game, not the deepest package. Like there's not much to do outside of run through that campaign. So you might be disappointed there if you're maybe we're expecting other modes or just a little bit more to it than what it is. But for what's there and sort of like within the pantheon of other beat 'em ups, this is definitely in the higher echelon of them.
Yeah, it's on the one. I would say the top tier. It's in there. It's in that tier, even if it's not the best game.
Yeah.
One thing that we haven't actually talked about yet that I like that they do with regards to the roster is when you play through the story mode, it suggests certain characters because of how they will fit into the story.
Right.
So it's like, oh, you want to use like She-Hulk, and I forget what character she was paired up with. It wasn't like Phyla-Vell. It was another character. It was like She-Hulk and another character.
Yeah, I think it was Cosmic. She was paired with Beta Ray Bill, I think, when you first used them.
Okay, so yeah. So it tells you that those characters are the ones that are going to be like not only in the story cutscenes leading into this level, but they're also like they'll have side objectives like defeat the boss with Spider-Man or destroy
use this attack this many times.
Yeah, like use Phoenix's like telekinesis throw to like discard of like 10 enemies or something like that. And it's like, okay, that's cool that like you can get extra like bonuses, and then like you can use like the stuff that you accumulate during your gameplay to unlock like shield files on all the characters and all the bosses and everything, which you have to be careful because I actually got some of the bosses spoiled from that little like shield files. Yeah, I was like, oh, I guess I'm fighting that guy at some point in this story mode.
I didn't even look at them until after the fact. Okay, yeah, that sucks. And also what I like about the challenges is that it can also teach you the moves, because there are some times where it's like an attack that maybe you haven't been using. So there were times where I'm like, wait, what is this attack? I don't know if I know what this is. And then I discover and go like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And now that I've done it 10 times, I'll never forget that I can do this. And it's really helpful.
Well, Marvel Cosmic Invasion, I think we both agree, is a very good game. Worth noting that we were playing, I believe, the PS5 version, both of us were.
Yes.
Because the Switch version was not quite available at the time that we were given pre-release codes from the developers. But it is out now on Switch and every other major platform. And if you're listening to this segment and you enjoyed us talking about what characters we would like to see added, leave a comment on what characters you would like to see added to the roster.
Batman.
Top 5 list. Yeah, Batman. Great example, Marcus. But no, like leave your top 5 Marvel heroes you would like to see added to the roster. And if there's a big bad you would like to see added as like the story arc that they would join for in post-launch DLC, leave that as well. Because I'm very interested to see what people who listen to this podcast would want to see added, because I'm also a big Marvel nerd. So it's like, I love geeking out about Marvel stuff. If I could have like another podcast, it would probably be about like nerd stuff, like talking about like Marvel and Star Wars and DC stuff. Like I'm so all in on that stuff. But
I thought you were going to name like Disney properties. Like, oh, so it's a Disney podcast. What you're saying? They own all the cool stuff.
It's not my fault they went on an acquisition spree and maybe ruined Star Wars a little bit, but who's to say? Who is to say what happened with Star Wars? But Marcus, thank you so much for joining me for this segment. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Blue Sky at Marcus Stewart 7.
Thank you so much. And we are going to take one final break of this episode. And when we come back, we will be talking 2 more new releases on Switch. We will be right back.
The Lincoln Wishlist sales event is happening now. Here's what's on everyone's wish list. Enjoying holiday jingles with brilliant 3D audio that surrounds you? Check. Watching snow flurries through the panoramic Vista roof? Check. Packing up presents with the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Check. Everything you want. All standard on the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com for exceptional offers on 2025 Lincoln vehicles today.
We are back for the final time in this review marathon of an episode, and I am now joined by Game Informer video editor Eric Van Allen, who is going to share his impressions of 2 new releases on the Switch, Octopath Traveler 0 and Demonschool. Eric, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little tired, you know. I think somewhere in the middle of all this, I thought to myself, I should like shorter games, you know? I think I really did a disservice to myself by becoming somebody who really likes either constantly updating games or really, really long games. And let me tell you, both of these are pretty long games. So this is the nature of the beast when it comes around to review season is the RPG critics among you are struggling. Please check in on that.
Oh, are you an RPG fan? I would have never guessed from the other shows that you host or co-host.
Yeah. Noted never talks about RPGs, never has opinions about RPGs, especially not ones that have octos or paths in them. Never talked about it before.
Yeah. So I introduced you as a Game Informer video editor, but you're also the co-host of the Game Informer show. You're a co-host of Acts of the Blood God, which is an RPG podcast, and of course, co-host of Normandy FM, which famously breaks down primarily BioWare RPGs, but also other RPGs in the space as well. But yeah, I don't know how you keep up with all of the RPGs that you keep up with. And then you also have time for like live service games and your newfound love of Magic the Gathering. So like,
yeah, it's a problem. Sleep right now is what's taking the hit. So we'll see how long that lasts.
What I picture your like gaming habits like, or like how I was at Thanksgiving, where we actually this year I actually met my family in Wisconsin Dells, and which is a big like amusement resort area in Wisconsin. And rather than like, you know, going through the whole rigmarole of cooking and everything and then having to clean up afterwards, we went to a resort that was hosting like a Thanksgiving buffet.
Ooh.
And it was really upscale and really, really delicious. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. But like, I started off, I had a big plate and I was like, all right, I'm just going to get a few things. I'm going to get like a little bit of turkey, a little bit of mashed potatoes, a little bit of they had like a roasted salmon that was really good. But by the time I got to the end of the line, my plate was just heaped and like overflowing with food. And that's how I feel like RPG gamers and live service gamers really approach their gaming habits.
It's funny you say that. If I had to give myself, if this was an interview situation, I had to say, what are your weaknesses, Eric? One of them is legitimately I sometimes just take too much on. I'm like, I can do this, I can help with that, I can do this, I can help with that, and it will always be a problem because I'll be like, oh, it's just a review of one video game. How long could it possibly take? And I find out pretty fast that a game like Octopath Zero or Demonschool it takes a lot of time. So that's the way you do it is you just got to be good about sectioning off time. I think this year I've especially had to learn how to this is going to sound weird, how to play a game when you don't want to play a game. And it's not that you don't enjoy playing the game, it's just that you've been staring at a computer screen all day and now you have to stare at a computer screen for another 3 to 4 hours to get your allotment of game time done. And that's a little peek behind the curtain of what it's like to be a critic at this time of year. My Thanksgiving break, I think I only played maybe like 5 to 6 hours of a game or something like that. I mostly tried to not game over my break. I was notably playing one of these to finish it up for review, but when I wasn't doing that, I was trying to read a book instead because I was like, fulfilling. Yeah, different. I read Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson cover to cover.
Nice.
It's a good one. It's really good. Recommend it.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who are really into Brandon Sanderson, and I'm not a big fiction guy when it comes to my reading, like, which is weird.
That's
I guess I get a lot of fiction through like the TV shows and like comics and like, I mean, I guess comics are reading, but like, you know, like novels. Like I'm gonna read a book. It's usually gonna be nonfiction, but like, you know, I get fiction through video games, comics, movies, TV shows. Like that's my primary ways of interacting with fiction. But yeah, I've heard nothing but great things about Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I highly recommend it, but I also highly recommend the 2 games we're talking about today.
Yeah, I was about to segue over back to that, but you did it for me. It's almost like you have podcast experience.
Almost.
So let's start with Octopath Traveler 0. Like I mentioned in the intro to this segment, this has been a review marathon. We had Kyle on to talk Metroid. We had Marcus on to talk Marvel. Now you have 2 games that you have been playing kind of in parallel with one another. You only handled the review for Game Informer for one of them, and that is Demonschool. But I would say Octopath Traveler 0 is inarguably the bigger name. So we're going to start with that. But yeah, talk to me about your history with Octopath Traveler, because my history with Octopath Traveler goes back to before the first game even came out. Because when we redid the Game Informer website, I believe this was 2017. I actually went to Nintendo of America, and they hooked me up with the developers of Octopath Traveler 1.
Oh, yeah.
And I did a big feature on Octopath Traveler, and it was one of these things where I negotiated with Nintendo to actually have it so we could put it on the website the exact same day as it was in the magazine, because it was like one of those, like, this is for the magazine, this is a magazine feature, but we wanted to showcase the new Game Informer website, which is the current Game Informer website. And we really, if you go find this feature on Octopath Traveler 1, it was an interview with the developers. I believe I got some hands-on. Yeah, I did, because I remember I got to play as Primrose and a few other of the characters. And it was just like this big blowout of Octopath Traveler. And I played the first game, thought it was pretty good, not the amazing game I hoped it was. And then I never got to play the second one. And I've heard that the second one is one of the greatest RPGs of this century.
Octopath 2. So Octopath 1, I played it because it was on the Switch at a time when you just wanted games for the Switch, right? It was the thing that fit well. It's a really gorgeous game. I think some of the mechanics are really, really interesting. It had a lot of the novel stuff that would eventually pan out very well. Builds on a lot of ideas that have been in the turn-based sphere for a while. The Bravely Default mechanic, or in this game it's called the boost mechanic, where you can kind of build up BP over turn and then use that to either augment, like strengthen abilities, or do more successive attacks. And then you have a break mechanic where you enemies have shields up, and when you break them, they get knocked out of the turn order, and then they take more damage. And so you want to kind of time things up to maybe circumvent a big attack that is coming by breaking them before they launch it, so that way now they can't use their big attack. Or you want to get your damage cycle in, so you want to set it up and then have the first person in your turn order break them, so now everybody afterwards can just dump damage like crazy. There's some really cool stuff like that. Octopath 1 had a lot of that. Octopath Traveler 2, I think, didn't fix what wasn't broken, and instead looked at what are ways in which this game can be better. A big thing from Octopath 1 was that the 8 stories really didn't link in until the end, and it was a very tenuous link at best. It was just kind of there to serve as the it all comes together. I think something people refer to a lot with these games is Live Alive, because it has kind of a similar vibe. I think it's a little bit different. I've always called it the Canterbury Tales of RPGs, where you're kind of doing these different stories, but also everybody's kind of almost like they're telling them to each other leading up to the final battle. That's how I've always liked to see it. But there's a lot of journeying together and doing things together. I think Octopath 2 said we're going to cement that a little bit more. We're going to make that there's kind of paired quests that will happen with your party. A lot of the main story kind of links in a little bit better in ways that are very subtle, but work out very well for the end. But also the actual main stories, I think, are incredibly strong, really, really strong individual. Like, you get kind of 8 bite-sized RPGs, and I say bite-sized, but each of them still probably takes you about 10 to 20 hours per character. I mean, this is a long game. I mean, I think my final file of Octopath 2 was maybe like 90 hours, 100 hours, something like that. And
so almost Persona length.
yeah. I think about a lot of the games. I mean, even Xenoblade and stuff like that gets up there too. And so I really loved Octopath 2. Thought it was one of the best, like you said, of this generation, of the Switch generation. Absolutely, I would say that if you own a Switch and you haven't played Octopath 2 and you've wanted kind of a classic Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 4 type RPG with a little bit of modern zhuzh to it, then this will do that. Octopath 0 fits in a weird space in between them, where Octopath 0 is kind of a repurposing of the ingredients of a mobile game that was created called Octopath Traveler Champions of the Continent, which was a gacha game. They tried to make an Octopath gacha. More power to them. And there was some really cool stuff in that. One of my former colleagues at Destructoid, Timothy Monblow, would always talk about how Champions of the Continent had some really cool stuff in it. It was worth eventually seeing that somehow. And so I think he was very happy that Octopath Zero happens. But it's really interesting because I think it finally proves something I've always personally believed, which is I get into a lot of these gacha games. I've played a pretty fair bit of Honkai Star Rail. I've played like several other gacha games that I just get into randomly that have really good stories, that have really great character. They have to have great characters. They're trying to sell them to you, but they have great designs, great gameplay. And then the gacha just gums up the works. It's all built on engagement. It's all built on daily logins and rolling on banners for the characters you want. And then you have to roll to get the same characters again, to get their leveled up versions, to unlock more abilities. And Octopath Traveler 0 says, well, what if we just made that game without any of the gacha stuff in it? So you're not rolling on anything. There's no banners. There's no nothing. It's just an RPG. And you pick up the characters and you play the game. It turns out when you do that, you make a pretty darn good video game.
Wait, you're saying that those gacha elements are not in service to the player?
Who maybe they're in service to some other entity involved in the transaction, who could say? But it's really cool to see, because I think Octopath Zero also ends up not feeling like an Octopath Traveler game in a really interesting way. I've compared it to its Octopath Suikoden. Like it's this idea where you are playing a character where after things happen, you are kind of rebuilding a town while also trying to hunt down and enact vengeance on those who have done wrong by you. Very, very Suikoden 2 in a lot of ways. And you spend kind of most of the early part of the game, which is what I have played. Granted, this is a 100-hour game. I've talked to reviewers who have finished this game. It's longer than you think it is. I'm at about the 15, 16 hour mark. Personally, I'm kind of doing all the initial big bad stuff, going through their paths and chapters and things. Even the way it's laid out, instead of having individual character stories, you have targets that you're going after and you're progressing their chapters, but also you're recruiting characters. So if you played Final Fantasy X, you can kind of recruit people to your Blitzball team. You can do that in this game, where you can stumble across characters that can join your party, and you do a little quest, or you win them over in some way, and they join up. And so you have a pretty large party, because this is also a game where you have 8 people in your party at any given time. We are fully Octopaths. We have a front row and back row, similar to Chained Echoes, if you've played that, where you can swap between them, and characters even have abilities where if they're coming forward from the back row or doing something in the back row or the front row, they will have different augments to their abilities. It's a really smart evolution of this mechanic. Previous Octopath games have toyed with the idea of either having all 8 characters in play at the same time, or having that mechanic where you're kind of trading off between parties. I mean, it's a classic JRPG thing that I think has fallen by the wayside, and I wish we'd see more of, because for a fun fact, last year I played Final Fantasy VI for the first time, and it has that section where you're defending the mountain against all the different units. You have to split your party up into different stuff and then move them around and kind of position stuff like that. And I was like, I haven't seen modern RPGs do this. What the heck? This rules. This is awesome. And Octopath Traveler 0 is kind of touching on some of that DNA to say, hey, what are some things that do get kind of interesting when you start to play around with those ideas and start to mishmash that. Characters are also very individualized. I think that's a remnant of the gacha system, is that rather than having these kind of one-size-fits-all characters that you have with Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, where they start with a class, but then you evolve them and subclass them and have them learn stuff from other people and kind of multi-class them out. Instead, you have very specialized characters that end up serving very specific needs. You start building your party around that. And so I think it's an interesting party composition twist in Octopath Traveler 0 that really makes it a cool new puzzle to solve, even if you've played the previous 2 Octopath games. But yeah, I don't know. That's a lot of words to say. Like, this is a really interesting RPG that I don't know if it's one of my favorites or if it's immediately winning me over in a lot of ways, but it is a really novel and cool follow-up to what the previous 2 games have done. Certainly an incredible repurposing of old assets and things like that.
Yeah, and I know that, a lot of the stuff does borrow from the standard Octopath Traveler mechanics, but it seems like there's this new like almost like town building mechanic that is introduced in this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you have a town, Wishvale. Mild spoilers for the opening prologue of the game. If you care about that, just jump forward like 10 seconds. Um, your town gets destroyed in classic RPG fashion, and part of the story is that you then rebuild it, and so that is you're rebuilding Wishvale. You have a companion character that is a carpenter that helps you kind of plan all that out. It's very, and I don't say this lightly, it's very Dark Cloud, in which you are getting these different plans, blueprints, either through the story or through talking to people in different towns, which is maybe honestly one of my favorite touches now that I think about this, because you can go, so path actions have always existed in Octopath Traveler. You have the ability to challenge people, to duel people, to recruit them, to use them as kind of summons in fights and things like that. Those are all tied to path actions, which are usually for a character's background. In this game, you kind of just have unified path actions. Each character has about 3 different path things you can do with them. And a lot of them do have the ability to either entreat them for something. So say like, hey, can you give me something, or I'll buy something from you. You can haggle them down a little bit if you have that path action open. And they might give you something that says, hey, here's a blueprint for a house. Here's how to make shrubbery in your town. And it gives you these things to then go back. And when you rebuild, you can build houses and then put people in them that you have recruited, because you don't just recruit party members that fight in your party. You can also recruit just NPCs that hang out in your town and say, hey, if I have you in my town, I get extra lumber every so often. So hang out, live in this house, so I get this bonus. And now I'm getting lumber, and that can turn into more house building down the line. Now, I think from what I've seen so far, a lot of it just kind of plays back into itself. I haven't got the sense yet of whether there's a reason to do it that will enhance the other parts of the game. It's just, if you like town building, it's got good, interesting town building that ties into, okay, you're out there, you're questing, go talk to people. And maybe when you talk to somebody, they might want to come back to your town. You can convince them to come back to your town, or maybe they might give you a blueprint to put a new house in your town. And if that doesn't immediately push you forward, I don't know, like if it will. I do think there's story quest stuff that will eventually tie into it that requires you to have kind of a built up town. But I do think broadly, for somebody who loves that Dark Cloud style thing of building a city and then watching it rise up from the ashes, it scratches the brain itch. It really, really does.
I mean, that was one of the things when I was reading our reviewer, George Yang, over at Game Informer. He pointed that out. And when I was reading that review, I was like, oh, that actually sounds like right up my alley. I'm a big fan of like the old city builders, like back in the day, like SimTown, SimCity, and then like City Skylines more recently. But like, he does go out of his way to say it's not at that level. It's like, don't go into this thinking you're getting like a second game into this package.
Yeah, it's not with that purpose either, because it's not really a management game in that sense. You know, I grew up playing SimCity 2000 and things like that, and I would say that this exists more to augment what you're doing and give you sort of things to path action with and do like kind of rewards to trickle out throughout the game, rather than something that's like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm, bringing in enough food because I have this many houses and we need to manage upkeep every so many cycles and things like that. It's not really that kind of thing. It's more, it's bonuses. It's all bonus and no risk of, you're not going to get a game over state because you mismanaged your town or anything like that. Which for me is kind of what I want. I want to put towns down and rearrange them and move all the buildings around and be like, okay, my favorite part selfishly is that you determine who lives where, and there are bonuses for characters living in certain places. So if they live in the right shop or the right house, you'll get a bonus from that as well. But a lot of the characters I have are just put them wherever, it doesn't really matter. And so I get into a little bit of shipping where I'm like, okay, you two, you're going in there. You go live in that house. I see you two, you winking at each other and stuff, and you go over here, and it's really fun in that way. I think it's, if you like playing the sort of Lego building, like developing your own little stories in your mind and headcanoning stuff, I think you'll absolutely enjoy that. And what is role playing if not leaning into those proclivities? So I like it for that. And going back to what I said earlier, it is that Suikoden aspect. It's that idea of you're doing stuff out in the world and then you have something reflected in it as you gain bonuses back in town, as you bring that stuff back and build back up. And from what I've played so far, I think the main story stuff, it's maybe one of the darker stories I've played in an RPG from the jump. And I don't say that lightly, because Octopath itself, maybe if you played Octopath Traveler 1, you didn't see it. Octopath Traveler 2 gets into some crazy stuff right from the jump, especially depending on whose story you start with. And Octopath Traveler 0 has just a lot of really heavy, mature topics, I would say. And I don't say mature in like, there's stuff, there's blood and guts everywhere and things like that. It's more like you're getting into these ideas of what does it mean to rebuild home? Where is home for a person? How do you, like, can criminals be redeemed? Can they find them? Is penance allowed for people who have committed certain crimes and things like that? And it gets really like into it. It does not pull any punches, and I'm really enjoying that so far. I think if you've wanted a story that's got a little bit more heft to it, that's got a little bit more text to dig into, I think Octopath has that. But it's also it's a hopeful game. It's a nice game where it's like we should do these things because it's worth it to do them, even if it's difficult, even if it's hard. And it's a very cozy game as well. It's been my winter game as the snow is falling out here. Y'all got snow up here. You didn't warn me about this. As the snow started falling, a lot of the early towns that you're in, depending on what path you do, are very cozy snow towns, very RPG snow biome towns, and it's really hitting. It's very good for that. So Octopath Traveler 0, I'm happy that Square is like committing to this series. I don't know what is happening that is causing them to do it, because I would have never guessed that they would have gone this hard into keeping this series going. But I'm glad they are, because it is, I think a lot of people complain a lot. They're like, oh, I wish we had a classic Final Fantasy. I wish we had a turn-based Final Fantasy. It's Octopath Traveler. That's the game you're looking for. It's Octopath Traveler. Go play it. Like, it is doing that thing. And I'm happy that there's just been a real drive to keep putting these out. And it's been cool to see a lot of people start to realize, like, hey, this thing is sticking. I should check this out, and start to get into it and be like, oh, there's a lot here to love. I would still, Octopath Traveler 0 is a very good game. I would say it and 2 are kind of very different games. So depending on what you want, I would kind of look into that. But also 0, I think, is like a $50 game right now, which is a crazy amount of value for the amount of hours you're getting out of this, if that's of concern at all, because a lot of the hour counts I've heard are pretty similar to 90 hours, 100 hours, huge amounts of content. So you're going to get a lot of bang out of your buck if you're looking for something this holiday season.
Well, if Octopath Traveler 0 sounds up your alley, it is available now on Switch, Switch 2, and every other major platform.
Popeye's Scary Good new Freddy Fazbear Box has garlic palm tenders and cheesy bites with marinara sauce. Try it before it's too late. And see Five Nights at Freddy's 2, only in theaters. Love that chicken from Popeyes. Limited time at participating U.S. restaurants.
But Eric, you did not review Octopath Traveler 0 for us. You
No.
did, however, tackle the review of Demonschool, which I think this might be one of the first times that people listening to this podcast have heard the name of this game. I know I certainly wasn't super familiar with it until you brought it up to me. That's like, hey, this is a game I'd like to review in a couple of months when it comes out. And then, it got delayed pretty substantially, a couple months. And we're finally here. It's out. And you've been playing it. You've rolled credits. Talk to me about what Demonschool even is, because when you brought it to me, I looked at it. I was like, oh, it just looks like kind of like paranormal Persona, and I think it extends well beyond that based on what you've been telling me.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna say up front, because as somebody who just used a bunch of game comparisons to talk about a previous game, I'm going to attempt to only say this once. It is Into the Breach meets Persona 2. and that is the one time I will say it, and keep me to it. Because I do think this game is doing more than just kind of mishmashing two games that you already know together. But Demonschool is about this character Faye, who is a demon hunter from a lineage of demon hunters who is going to a college on an island. I forget, Hemsk Island, I believe is what it's called, where you are caught up in a lot of demonic happenings around it, where you know that it is 10 weeks until the apocalypse because of a prophecy that has been foretold that demons and demonic apocalypse will happen in 10 weeks. And you go on these adventures, you have weekly assignments, there's kind of a calendar system where you are building towards that. And that's kind of like the roughest approximation, because a lot happens in the in-between, but that's kind of the broad story setup. You meet people, you build a party, you do a lot of interacting. There's a lot of social sim type elements where you play mini games with people to build up social status, and you can go do side quests. A lot of the side quests are kind of just talk to somebody, go somewhere, talk to somebody, do a battle, etc. And then the other half of the game is tactical battles, is a tactics game where you are on a, I forget how many squares it is, but you're on a grid, rectangular grid, very like squares. You move kind of strangely. It's kind of an interesting game. There's a lot of little nuance, because this game, I've talked to the developers over at Necrosoft about this game before, and one of the things that came up is they were really inspired by some of the more offbeat tactics games. So not necessarily just Final Fantasy Tactics, but games like Shin Megami Tensei Devil Survivor, which is one of my favorite games of all time, Valkyria Chronicles, things like that. And sort of the ways in which we have adhered to a lot of tactics ideas in the past, but not all of the tactics ideas in the past. And so you have a rectangular grid, you have 4 people on your team, you have the demons. The demons are kind of either going to fight you or progress towards the end of the level where there is a barrier. The barrier can take like 1 hit and then it'll be open, and that kills whatever demon opened it. And then if another demon gets through, so 1, 2, 3, you're out, that ends the fight. Demons escape into the real world. So you need to keep them from doing that. You also need to kill enough demons to hit the end quota that is up in the top left of your screen, and then reach the other end of the field to have a character there to seal it. It reminds me a little bit of Ender's Game in a weird way, where you kind of have those, it's the ways to win is you got to like, get to the enemy gate.
Speaking of fiction books that I have read.
Yeah. I know it was a weird pull. I was thinking about it because for some reason YouTube serves me like trailers and old clips of movies all the time now. And Ender's Game came out recently, and I was like, oh yeah, I did watch that. That was a really bad movie. Shout outs to Asa, true Dota player. So Demonschool is also a perfect information. Well, not perfect information. It's imperfect information tactics game where you plan out your phase and everybody does their stuff, and then the enemy moves, and usually the enemy moves according to a certain set of rules. So crawler demons will kind of go 2 spaces forward, and if there's something in front of them, they'll attack it. Zombies will walk 1 space and then swipe. They kind of all have these rules. There's a little bit of variance, obviously, if you kind of have things, maybe they walk one way or the other way, it's whatever, but you kind of know what's going to happen. So at the start of Demonschool, it's a little bit too narrow, and it's maybe my biggest concern with the game is that you spend a lot of time with just your initial 4 characters who kind of all have different movesets that are interesting. 2 characters are kind of your brawlers. They can do direct damage. They can knock things back or knock them into each other to do damage. One of your characters is what I call a phaser. I think the game might actually call that too. But they basically, if there are enemies lined up, you can move through all of them if you connect with one of them. So say there's kind of 1, 2, 3 in a diagonal. You can dash through all of them to do damage, stun them, whatever your effects are. And then you have a healer who can't do damage but can heal your characters, and also if they're at full health, buff. If they're at the full health meter, they can buff them to give them extra attack. Eventually you get more characters who kind of expand on those ideas or add new stuff, but you spend a lot of time with just that initial crew. But a lot of the interesting part comes from every time you move a character, you have a set amount of AP. And so it goes down by 1 the first time you move them, and then 2, and then 3. So if you keep moving one character in a turn, you don't move a lot overall. And they also limit your restriction in this game to say, okay, moving diagonally or front and back is pretty easy, but moving side to side is a little bit more difficult. And so you kind of have to do a lot of this really interesting song and dance of figuring out how all these rules are going to work in your favor to create these moments where you're pulling off turns where, okay, Namiko is going to dash through this line of enemies, and then Faye's going to like swing kick in, and then that'll create the combo down the line. So now they do their cut in manga panel attack, and they do a whole combo down the line, and you take all the enemies out. And that was the last 3 that you needed for the quota. So now, Newt can dash forward and hit the end, and then seal the portal to take it out before that demon at the back opens up the gate. There's a lot of cool stuff that happens like that, where you plan out your turn and you say, okay, lock it in, and then you watch it all play out, and it looks awesome. And I think that's like the strongest moment in this game, is when you think that you are absolutely screwed, and you manage to find the right combination of moves, attacks, patterns that will save you, that will do the right thing. And I think one of the strongest parts of this game is the boss fights in that respect. Some of the coolest, this might sound heretical, I think that a lot of tactics games are bad at boss fights. Mm-hmm. And I say this as somebody who loves the genre, but it's really hard to take something where Fire Emblem's a great example, where Fire Emblem has a lot of great tension in its normal battles, but its boss fights are just like, well, we have this really statted up brick of a dude, and you've got to figure out how to kill him. It's like, okay, well, I just have to kind of play the game and play it more cautiously. But Demonschool finds really cool ways to say, how can you change up a tactics fight to make it feel more special when these big enemies show up? Maybe instead of having to fight an enemy directly, you're knocking bombs into its path as you're running away from it. So you have to do this sort of song and dance of bombs are dropping down and you're punching them backwards into the path of the boss as you're fleeing down the map from it. Or maybe you're on a circular radial plane and the boss is doing these kind of sweeping clockwork attacks, and you're kind of scooting around it and trying to maneuver around its attacks as you're hitting it over and over again. Really cool stuff like that. And you add in the style, which is very turn of the century Y2K. Like, remember when we didn't all have phones that connected to the internet? Remember how nice that was? Like, I really love the vibe of it, the music of it, the graphics of it. And I think Necrosoft really, I was worried at the beginning. Like I said, I think the first couple weeks of this game are, in game are a little rough, or take a while to get going. You kind of do the same thing over and over and over again. But then once it starts to open up, once those party members come in, once you start to play the game in a wider sense, you see what is happening there, and it really starts to win you over. I really enjoy it. It managed to make my list. I recently logged in my top 10, and it did manage to make the list. So that tells you how I feel about it. It's a really cool novel game that I think if you are a tactics sicko, if you love to think about tactics games, or if you love turn of the century Y2K stuff, it's really one to look for.
Yeah, I've been watching trailers and clicking through screenshots as you've been talking, and yeah, it's very striking art style. And I was not even that certain of like how the combat was going to play out when we started talking about you reviewing this at Game Informer.
Yeah.
So I did not realize that the 2 reviews, and you've done 2 reviews for Game Informer now, right?
I've done 3 reviews.
3. What was the other one? Because I know Final Fantasy, I know Final Fantasy Tactics, and Demonschool.
Goodnight Universe.
That's right. Yeah. So you did break up your tactics.
That one snuck in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But if you want to read Eric's full review, it will be up soon.
By the time of this recording. Yeah.
GameInformer.com. You gave it an 8, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yep. Yeah. Gave it an 8. I think it's. And that 8 is a backloaded 8, but I think it's worth it to get there to see it. It's a very the last few weeks of that game are really something incredible to see, and I think it's a really, really cool thing that I hope more people give a shot, especially because it feels so different from everything else out there. Like this year, like many other years, but especially this year, I've really sought out games that feel off the beaten path that don't feel like games I've played before that kind of challenge me in a lot of ways. And I think Demonschool is like one of the banner bearers for that.
And you were talking about with Octopath, like bang for your buck. It's $50. It's a 90-hour, 100-hour RPG. How long was Demonschool? Because Demonschool is only $25.
Yeah, Demonschool, I'd have to check here. I can boot my Steam up real quick and tell you right now. And I think Steam's numbers are a little bit off because I want to say I put maybe like an extra $5 in here that got lost somewhere when I was traveling. Thank you, Steam Cloud Sync. But I think ultimately it was about like a 35-hour game, something like that.
Still pretty good bang for your buck.
Yeah. And I also did not complete every side quest. When I was getting near the end of it, I was kind of mainlining. So I would say that if you're trying to do everything in the game, you probably have at least another 3-5 hours in there somewhere. It is largely a critical path game where there's kind of side ventures to go do, and they can unlock stuff. Obviously, there's social links you can do and all that sort of thing. But I would say it kind of progresses forward constantly, so you do get kind of a main path, and I wouldn't worry too much about missable things unless you just don't do things.
So very similar to like that Persona formula.
Yeah, but I think the game's also mostly pretty good about telling you about stuff, saying like, hey, this is, you can go do a side quest over here. You open up your map, at the start of every day, and it'll have listed stuff out where it's like, hey, you can go do this. Hey, you can go check this out. And yeah, and also it's gotten a lot of support. If we talked about this maybe a week ago, I would have been bringing up that there's some bugs, there's some hitches. I had one quest that was crashing a lot on me. I couldn't complete it. It would just crash every time I got to the end of it. And within the span of me finishing this game for review, the team at Necrosoft has already been updating and fixing a lot of that. And the support has been really, really solid. So I would say that it's in a pretty good place and being supported well by its team too. So that if that factors in, it's good to see.
Yeah, that's always great when, a team just doesn't throw it out there and they're like, well, we've put out a broken game. Might as well just not even worry about fixing it. So good to hear that they are supporting it. But like I said, it's out now on Switch and every other major platform. But Eric, thank you so much for joining me to talk about Octopath Traveler 0 and Demonschool.
Love to talk about RPGs. Love to say I'm going to have a quick 20-minute episode, and it turns into a quick double that time length.
And that happens a lot more than you would expect. But thank you so much, everyone, for listening. As you know, the Patreon and the associated Discord server are the best places to get in touch with me, but you can also hit me up at brian@allthingsnintendo.com or reach out to me on social media at Brian P. Shea. Eric, where can people find you online?
You can find me at cmoosey on Blue Sky. I think it's at cmoosey.bsky.social or something like that. Otherwise, find me over at gaminformer.com. Eric Van Allen. I do write things occasionally now and then. Mostly you'll find me on the YouTube channel doing a lot of stuff. I believe we should have some cool stuff going up this week. Like our Metroid Prime 4 review, I think it will definitely be live by the time this podcast is live. But the video review should be up. We have a bunch of cool video stuff still trickling out from the cover story and various other things that are just going to be hidden as the weeks go on. You can also find me over at Axe the Blood God, at Blood God Pod, independent RPG podcast I co-host with Nadia and Victor. We're doing a lot of cool end of the year stuff. Stay tuned for that. And Norm BFM, we just started production on Veilguard. I played the first part of Veilguard the other night. I'm playing Veilguard again. If you want to talk about big RPGs that I'm playing. So we started that the other night. That is myself and Ken Shepard. Check that out. Normandy FM on Patreon, Blue Sky, everywhere else. Very excited to dig into that game because what a strange game to talk about. Even 1 year removed, there's been so much that has happened when it comes to EA and BioWare. So should be an interesting season.
That is our show for this week. Thank you so much for listening. Take care. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening to this episode of All Things Nintendo. Before we close out the show, I just want to give a special shout out to the $10 patrons of the podcast. Alex Stadnick, Andy Junkins, Ben Richland, Chad Brecky, Chaps My Ass, Derek Sigmund, Dusty Beeman, Ian T. Clark, Jawar Hello, Johnny Five, Jose Villalobos, Joshua DeProy, KC Radio Man, Cody Gibson, Creeper 207, Ozman83, Paul at Drunk on Mako, Pratable, Rob McCann, Bobby Mac 265, Robert Sosa, Roberto Nieves, Roger Reichert, Russell Sayer, Smithy Poo, Zane Sink, and Zek 3 Swords Sama. Thank you so much for your continued support. You are the reason I'm able to keep doing this week after week. My first job ever was Blockbuster.
That's a much cooler first job. I would have liked to have worked at Blockbuster.
It was great because you could rent any movie or any game until, like, I want to say like 6 months in. I was loving it. It was like the greatest job ever because you could just like take any movie you wanted home. And then a new manager came in. Like the owner fired the manager, and a new manager came in and fired every single person on staff because they're like,
"Why?
We need to rebuild this team from the ground up." Was basically their thought.
Were you guys like a team or something?
I mean, we weren't great employees in hindsight, but like,
it's like you agree with him in hindsight. Like, yeah,
yeah. It was definitely, speaking of the Wild West. That was the Wild West of retail stores. And
that was your first mass layoff.
It really was.
Your first job.
Yeah, my first job. Only I think it was like, I don't think you can classify it as layoffs as much as it is just like firing everybody and like being like, we need to have a Great Flood equivalent of this Blockbuster video.
Yeah, tomato, some would say. The end result's the same. You're all out of work.
Yeah.
All right, all set?
Well, yeah, I think we're all set now that we've
talked about Deception, the best Mortal Kombat game of the 2000s that isn't Shaolin Monks.
Shaolin Monks. I'm so mad that it was not in the Legacy Collection.
That's why you got to do a sequel.
I wonder, though, if they're going to do a DLC update the way they've done with Atari 50, where they're like,
oh yeah,
here's the Activision pack, here's the Namco pack. I wonder if they're going to do here's the 2000s Mortal Kombat pack. Like, they could sell that for probably like $40 and get like the Deadly Alliance trilogy and Shaolin Monks.
I would almost question, they would get their money, but if they were going to do that, I would have just held this off and just have that all at once and have this sell more out of the gate.
I don't know. Like, I'm just looking at like how Digital Eclipse has done it in the past, and it's like
because there's one thing to add more old games that are still limited appeal in terms of like the generation that's going to engage with them, but I think those 3D fighters are still. Those were so beloved that they were so requested from that era fan, like the fans I got in during the 2000s, that to leave them out if you were always going to bring them in, it's like you may as well just do that from the beginning. but I don't know. I mean, I guess you could say that about every DLC.
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder if that's just out of the scope of what their original thing was, and then being like, well, it's going to cost us more money, and we're not going to charge $100 for the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, but we could do $60 now and $30 or $40 later.
Yeah, and I would also like, I still haven't finished the documentary. I know you have, but I've heard from people that finished it that the once they get like later in the timeline, it's not as robust as kind of the earlier stuff. So it's like, if you could give me a documentary that is a little bit more about that era of the series.
Yeah, I agree.
Because as much as I love the early stuff, it is stories I've heard before just as an MK fan, for the most part, where it's like, yeah, there isn't as much, I don't think there's as much just like documentary or like stuff about like, tell me about the 2000s. Like, why did you kill Liu Kang? Like, what was that decision and Deadly Alliance? Like the weapon fighter stuff, like how well did these do versus the other games? Like, get into all that. Like, give me a whole like timeline of just Shaolin Monks development.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have
MK versus DC.
Yeah,
that would be a whole like. Tell me about that. Yeah,
like add like 2 or 4 chapters about like the more modern era. And then, yeah, I mean, it would be cool just to have Shaolin Monks playable anywhere, because like it feels like that's the natural evolution of those other games that are on there, like Mythologies and Special Forces.
Yeah, it does give me hope that if they made those playable on modern hardware, then they will get to Shaolin Monks either as a separate release or
maybe
like
it's
you said,
just
DLC.
like Maybe they just do MK Legacy Collection too.
I'll take it. Hey, I still have my physical copy of Shell and Monks. It'd be nice not to have to keep busting that out.
But all right, should we do a podcast segment?
Yeah, we just did, actually. So good night. Just what you wanted, right?
Hey there, I'm Hugh from Podderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Rolling Dice and Taking Names, the premier tabletop review show. Join Marty and Tony as they invite you to their metaphorical kitchen table to talk about all the latest board games, RPG games, miniatures, and anything in the tabletop world that takes their fancy. From in-depth reviews to the latest gaming news, they make it their mission to find the latest and greatest in the tabletop world and deliver it all wrapped up for your listening pleasure. Available wherever you get your podcasts.